I do feel like a fool right now at this point, because when the NFL pulled the plug on DirecTV for the NFL Sunday Ticket, I had a modicum of hope that somehow we were going to be able to get some reasonable, affordable package deal, and that was so
You are a
silly
fool.
of me to think of
You're
that.
a
Uh,
gigantic fool.
yeah, just a massive fool. YouTube TV has has the rights to the Sunday Ticket now, and you too can watch any NFL game you want for the low price of $450 a season. If you are not a YouTube TV subscriber, if you are, you're in luck because now it's only $350 for you. So
I,
wow, what a deal! What a deal!
so I have friends who are YouTube TV people. My little brother's a
I
YouTube.
have YouTube TV,
So, and I have
so
many people who thought
yeah.
it was going to be maybe an extra $20 charge or something for them. So I'm not shocked about the non YouTube TV price, right?
Mhm.
But if you're already a YouTube TV person, I would be really, really ticked off today when
Yeah.
I saw that announcement because that is a gigantic extra lump sum on your bill. Now, that being said, if you are, let it be clear, if you are any sports bar or bar that
Oh, it's a must have.
makes
Yeah.
the decision to say we would like to have football on our screens, any game, and so people can enjoy it, this is for $500 for the whole season. You will make that money and back and then some by the second weekend of your bar if you're a good bar, right?
Yeah.
And you know how to market it. So you got it. You got to do it. You got to do it. But for me, I'm lucky enough to live in the area where my team is
Right.
shown the majority of the time. So I will be Randy Jackson. It's a no for me, dog, on DirecTV,
Yes.
and I still have the NFL Plus, which lets you watch the games that are in your market. So it's a cool way to kind of double up on some stuff and
Yep, yep.
kind of dual
Sure.
screen, and then you can rewatch games and get the all 22 and stuff. So I'm going to stick with that for $4.99 a month, and get my content that way. I'm gonna pass. I'm gonna pass.
Yeah. I look as someone who doesn't live in the market for his team, I'm still very, very likely going to pass on this. That's just it's too much money. And the weird thing is too with YouTube TV. So like I have a you can kind of customize your package based on what you like, but they do have certain things that you have to pay for regardless, right?
Okay.
So like I have like the sports package, so I can get like MLB Network and NFL Network and the Red Zone. They now, though, are saying if you bundle with Red Zone, then it's actually 390 a season, not 350. So it's an extra $40 to bundle with Red Zone. But what if I already have Red Zone? It makes no sense. I think what's going to happen here is they're going to take Red Zone away and
Probably.
then you have to get it bundled with the ticket moving forward. So they're kind of, giving everyone the shaft even after the fact after acquiring the NFL Sunday ticket. It's a disaster. Look, I mean, they're eventually going to have to get to a point where they let people just pick a team for a cheaper price, $150 for a team for one season. Um Although I know that they probably see the writing on the wall with that, know that, probably what 60% of customers only want to watch their one team. And so they would lose out on the profits from all of that. But I
Yeah.
do think they're missing out on people like me who would have otherwise paid them $150 to watch the Steelers. I'm not going to pay $400 to watch, the teams. So, yeah, you can go get a VPN and watch the games through that.
I also
Say that you're watching from London.
I'm a huge proponent of still going out. Like if there's a game I want to watch,
Absolutely.
there's a game that I want to watch that when I'm as a Bears fan, majority of my day is noon kickoffs, right? So I'm not I don't when it's a noon kickoff and there's 7 or 8 other games going on, like I don't care to have direct TV to watch other games at that point in time anyways, because I'm gonna focus on I'm gonna watch my game. You know what I'm watching the Bears. And then there's if you have regular cable like I do, CBS Fox will have a game that I'm interested in enough that's good enough on that 3:00 slate. One of them will have a decent matchup that is important in some way, shape, or form. So I'll flip to that. And then the other one I can get on my NFL Plus. I'll watch it that way. And then by the time that point in time and Sunday rolls around, you have Sunday Night Football. And so then everyone watches Sunday Night Football, Monday night, Thursday night. You get, I have Prime just for other reasons. So I don't worry about missing out on Thursday Night Football. For me, I feel like that I'm in the majority of most football watchers. And yeah, DirecTV, the Sunday Ticket now, especially just going to YouTube and all that, I could see the subscriber base taking a hit. Red Zone, I would like to always have available just because I think Red Zone is really entertaining, especially if you're watching your game, to have Red Zone on the other screen, just to be able to keep up with whatever, the big plays are, big action and the scoring plays that, the stuff that matters the most. But I certainly am not paying that much money to just have access to Red Zone.
I swear we're gonna get to the meat and potatoes of this thing pretty soon, but I do want to add to that real quick. I thought it'd be hilarious. This would be like prime, like Key and Peele sketch. I was thinking if you had Red Zone for baseball Monday through Friday, where it's just like, because people play fantasy baseball now, but how exhausted would that host be by Friday? Like they just go, like they would take you through a timeline in the sketch of like Monday, Tuesday, and this guy just slowly getting more disheveled, more exhausted, and just by Friday ready to die because the number of games you'd have to go to.
If you had a rotating group of hosts,
You'd have to, yeah. Right, you would watch that
because that is when I'm not watching my game of baseball, the one thing I still love ESPN for in the summer is the baseball highlights. Because there's no way you can watch that many games of baseball. And there's games that, you're like working and there's like 10 games going on sometimes during the summer. So I will watch ESPN, a bunch of ESPN highlights of here's the 2 minutes on the Angels A's. You know what I mean? I'll watch that all day. I love, the 10 o'clock Sports Center for that.
People want the home runs. They want the 2-run doubles. Well, they want to see the the great 3 strikeout inning or something like that. That's all.
Every day in baseball, something happens that hasn't happened in like 100 years, right? And I want to see. I want to see those moments. And as a casual fan of the sport, absolutely, I think you could really be onto something there.
I think it'd be fascinating and really fun.
I volunteer us to be the 2 first rotating hosts of MLB Red Zone.
Heck yeah, I'm on board. You're probably going to need one of those auctioneers to come on too, just to learn how to talk super fast and get through it, because that could go haywire pretty quickly. But yeah, I think it's a good idea nonetheless. We should move forward with that. But we are here with some football news as well. We've got OBJ back in a uniform in the NFL. We've got some interesting shakeup news in relation to the number 3 overall pick in this year's draft, and a couple other things as well as teams wrap up their 30 visits with particular players. Of course, the quarterbacks are being well represented in those visits throughout the league, especially in the top 10 of the NFL drafting teams. So let's start, Mark, with the news of Odell Beckham Jr. back in the NFL. Well, he never really left, but back on a team with the Baltimore Ravens, gets signed to a massive $15 million guaranteed 1-year deal worth up to $18 million. This for a guy that, look, we may disagree slightly on this. He obviously produced great for the Rams down that Super Bowl stretch 2 years ago, was great in the Super Bowl as well, then got injured, didn't play last season, and, is back ready to attack it again. He is, if I remember correctly, 32 years old at this point, maybe 33. and he's certainly not getting any younger. He's had some injuries as of late, has bounced around now to 4 teams in his NFL career, but really 3 in the last 3 seasons. I just have a lot of question marks about OBJ, and for them to pay that amount of money to him clearly, and I don't think it takes geniuses here to read the tea leaves, is that this was an attempt to help lure Lamar Jackson and make it a little bit more attainable to get him signed and get him ready back playing with the team. But regardless, that's a lot of guaranteed money to shell out for a guy who might, not be a number 1. He's probably a number 2 or number 3 really at best.
This is the husband picking up flowers on the way home to re-engage conversation, right? She's mad at you. You screwed up the night before. You slept on the couch. You haven't talked all day. And this is you picking up flowers, but this is you don't just go to Walmart or Hy-Vee or your local grocery store. This is like I stop in at the local boutique flower shop and buy the overpriced, beautiful looking bouquet, knowing that it will not last long.
Yeah,
okay.
It's going to die within 2 days, most likely.
It's got to be a showstopper for just to get your foot in the door to be like, I know you're still upset, but can we at least start talking again? Can we start the conversations again? I think that's exactly what this is. I might be the only one who really thinks this is a fun. Like, I have no problems with this at all. I have no problem with the money because it's 1 year. It's 1 year. You're overpaying by probably about $5 million at least. And you know what? In the long run, if you got to overpay a little bit to OBJ to underpay Lamar Jackson to get him to come back to the table to really talk about Lamar. Let's get this 3-year, $150 million guaranteed deal done. And we're going to give you $50 million a year for the next 3 years. Let's get it done. Let's move forward. Let's go. This could really reignite that. What I've heard is Lamar is really big on that 4th year. And so maybe by doing this, the Ravens can say, look, we did this for you. You and OBJ are tight. You saw you celebrating on social media together, right? You wanted this happen. We got OBJ. He's happy. If it works out really well, we're happy to re-sign OBJ again next year, right? But now we want to drop the 4th option, the 4th year of the contract. We'll do 4 years to, $175 million set, $150 million guaranteed. But that 4th year is going to be very much, we can cut you, do things, non-guarantees just in case something goes wrong with your body. Like we give you, now you give us. And you think to yourself, well, Mark, that's insulting. But that's what Lamar has to be okay hearing and dealing with because he doesn't have an agent himself. I have a feeling real positive vibes in the camp for Baltimore. I know it's crazy. On the last episode, I basically said, I firmly believe Lamar Jackson's not going to be a Raven. There's still a long way to go. But this is certainly a real, I think, a blow to my take that Lamar is not going to be a Raven anymore. I think this is a real step in the right direction. It's a real step in the right direction for Lamar coming back. I believe that.
I do struggle with how to view what the move means in general because there were a couple different ways I think you could go with it. Ultimately, I think I'm in the camp of this was a clear indicator that OBJ was not getting much love on the market at all. And so, because I don't think there's a way that they could find a way to guarantee him that if you come here, Lamar's staying and Lamar will be your quarterback. Because, of course, if that was the case, I think absolutely he'd be enticed to come. But I don't think that's the case because of what all we know, there is still a long ways to go for Lamar to be, properly satisfied with the organization and what they're doing. So what this tells me then is OBJ was potentially okay with signing this deal, not knowing if it's going to be Lamar Jackson throwing him the football or, a rookie quarterback, a washed up quarterback, or a backup quarterback throwing him the football for all next year, which wouldn't bode well for his prospects moving forward in his NFL career. So it was all about the money at that point
Yeah.
and the prospects of potentially getting to play with Lamar. I'm not going to discount that, but clearly no other team was getting close, because if there was another team like the Cardinals or a team with a well-established quarterback that was willing to give him 12 million, I bet you OBJ would have gone for the sure quarterback for a few less mil versus a less certain situation here in Baltimore. So I don't think he got a guarantee
Yeah.
from Lamar that Lamar's going to be there this year,
I
and I think there's still a long ways to go.
Yeah, I 100% agree with everything you said there. I do think OBJ saw the highest guarantee was going to come from Baltimore. They were going to get him to 15 million. That's in his bank account, ready to play football again. I think OBJ also, I mean, good on him. Look at Juju just had to do a 1-year prove it deal where he took like $3 million from the Chiefs. OBJ's on a 1-year prove it deal, but for 15 million, possibly earning 18 million. That's pretty damn good. I wouldn't say no to that either. And if I'm OBJ, you're going to get the lion's share of the targets. No matter who's throwing you the football, if you're able to stay healthy, your numbers are going to look pretty darn good, because whether it's Huntley or Lamar or whoever, you're the playmaker. So your numbers are going to look good enough to where if you stay healthy through this year, I think OBJ is thinking to himself, he can get himself another contract somewhere else for another year or two and some more guaranteed money. I think it makes a ton of sense. A lot of people were saying the Jets. And I do think that there was some serious talk with the Jets, and that's probably why Baltimore went up to 15 million. And they called, I bet the agent said to, Baltimore said, listen, the Jets are looking to do it, but they're looking at guarantees around 12, 11. And if you can get us to this number, we will sign on the dotted line right now. And I think that's probably how it happened. That's how these things go. Baltimore got to the number that they needed to get to in the guarantees for OBJ to just sign on the dotted line. Baltimore knowing they're overpaying, but also it's only 1 year. And again, it's the flowers. It is that, okay, let's just break a little tension here. Let's come back in the room. You don't have to walk out of the room as soon as I walk in. Break a little tension. Hi, how are you? Okay, things were said. Things happened. Now can we talk? I think I really, truly believe at the heart of it, that's what Baltimore also realized this could be.
Yep, open the door back up, and hopefully they can help lure Lamar back to the negotiating table. So, this is obviously the fascinating story of the offseason, is what's going to happen with Lamar Jackson and what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
It's been quarterback centric for the last, probably 6 years of just what's going to happen with all of these quarterbacks, and Lamar's just the latest. But yeah, this is a significant move to at least try and push him in the right direction on that front.
I also think my final thought on this, and I think it's worth bearing, is that if you are a team who's interested in Lamar, at this point in time, I think the Ravens know they only have now kind of this last 2-week window, right? Because I think a lot more teams are going to be much more willing to offer Lamar a contract, knowing they might have to give up 2 first-round picks after the draft, because it's so much easier to sell fan bases on who cares if 2024 and 2025 picks, right? Who cares? And so I think Baltimore knows that teams could become really desperate in 3 weeks. And so I don't think Baltimore really wants to get to that point where legitimately teams are making, all right, here's 200 million guaranteed, and we'll give up 2 picks because the draft didn't work the way we thought it would. And now, good God, we need a quarterback. So I think Baltimore also knows if they were going to break this ice, they have to do it soon. And if they're and by doing it with OBJ, it's an opportunity to really maybe, as we said, get that ball rolling. I do think time for this is sensitive because, as we said in the last show, post-draft, it's for the final 4 or 5 teams that don't have a quarterback, it's going to be, all right, someone's going to get aggressive and get desperate for Lamar.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I totally agree with you on that front. So we'll see how the draft plays out, and likely to hear more news in May. Speaking of the draft, the number 3 overall pick has been heating up per Adam Schefter.
Yeah.
He is reporting that 6 teams are making calls to the Arizona Cardinals about trading up to the number 3 overall pick. It's obviously a highly coveted one for Arizona. We're unlikely to see Houston moving out of number 2. And of course, the Panthers already traded into number 1. So those picks appear to be ironclad, but it's number 3, the next in line to potentially get a 3rd quarterback in the draft.
Yeah.
And we've got 6 teams in play. So we're going to open up the floor here to discuss which teams we think are included in this sweepstakes, if you will, come April 27th.
We didn't plan this, but can we go one by one and just think, let's try to guess the 6 teams?
All right.
We'll each do 3. I'm going to start with one, and I will leave an obvious one on the board, but I'm going to start with one that I think makes a lot of sense. The Tennessee Titans. They're at 11.
Absolutely.
Right? They're at 11. They have a roster that is not a total rebuild. It's not a total gut. They've spent a lot of money, though, in their defensive line now with the re-signing of Simmons, in their running back. They have a young wide receiver who they really like. They have an okay offensive line, and they are in a division that is wide open, now besides Jacksonville. We think Jacksonville's going to maybe kind of take the division by the reins, but even Jacksonville doesn't seem like they're not Kansas City. I'm not worried about them, beating us 2 times a year if I'm the Titans. We feel like,
but it is becoming a force to be reckoned with, that division. With the Colts too, for sure.
Getting ahead of the Joneses, right? Indianapolis, if you're Tennessee, you could get right in front of your rivals, Indy. You'd be right behind your rivals in Houston, so you could, kind of see how it falls and get that next guy. I think Tennessee would be one of them. I think they'd be looking to move up for a quarterback. Richardson or Levis could easily sit behind Tannehill one more year. Last year, Tannehill on the books. Richardson a year behind Tannehill. Again, they kind of did it last year with, Malik Willis is kind of this project. But Richardson, I think we would agree, way more physically imposing and physically gifted than Malik Willis. And
and he played in the SEC, not Liberty.
Less of a project in that way. So I'm going to start mine with Tennessee.
I think Tennessee is a huge front runner for that, for sure. And how fascinating would it be, Mark, to watch this AFC South in the subsequent years when we're talking about Trevor Lawrence entering year 3, and then 3 rookie quarterbacks in the division. I mean, that could easily, if they pan out, which is a big if, but that could easily become one of the best divisions in the league.
Yeah.
If all, goes according to plan and these quarterbacks end up being, legitimate starting NFL quarterbacks. It'd be fascinating to watch. Another one for me, it's another obvious one at number 8, the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah. Okay.
Look, I think the Falcons are going to go quarterback. I don't think they are this draft. And for reasons, I'm not sure that they're convinced of these other guys. They're in less of a position to work with a project quarterback, in my view. But that being said, someone like Richardson, who is a freak athlete. I mean, Arthur Smith's run-heavy scheme seemed tailor-made for Lamar Jackson. That's why I thought Atlanta was such a good fit for him. That could easily work with Richardson while you build up his ability to throw the football and work within a passing NFL system, kind of like what we saw with Jalen Hurts in year 1 as well. A lot more, designed runs. And of course he ran a ton last year as well, but really kind of ballooned that passing game. So I could see the Atlanta Falcons being a part of those teams looking to move up and say, hey, you know what? We'll jump in there as well. because we have a division that's gettable right now, and all we need is a quarterback. I'm not sure how confident they are in Desmond Ritter and company. So that to me would be a primary option. Out of 6 teams, I'm not sure they're as likely as Tennessee, though, to be one that would be willing to make this move, but I think they're a part of it.
Yeah, I would agree. Atlanta's probably one of the 6. The other one, the third of the teams that I think is one of the 6 is Seattle. And I think
Okay.
it may be less obvious, but I do think Seattle is a team that looks at the way the draft shakes out and says, um, if anyone is going to take Richardson, it feels like it should be Seattle, because Seattle has Geno basically on a glorified 1-year deal. That by this time next year, going into next year's draft, they can cut Geno and take a very reasonable hit for it. And if they keep Geno in going in next year's their starter, or being competing against a person they draft or bring in, they don't owe Geno enough to where it's like, God, this is embarrassing. You're paying that dude, $40 million.
Yeah,
And
they'd still be comfortable making the decision if they go with the better quarterback in that
exactly
instance.
right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So I think, and I do think Seattle and Richardson make sense in the fact, or honestly Levis as well, because Pete Carroll loves deep ball shots off of play action because he's established the run. Levis and Richardson both have gigantic arms, and they have DK Metcalf. Remember, a year ago, DK Metcalf signed that like 3 or 4 year extension. And we were kind of shocked by that because, like, well, they just traded your quarterback. Why are you staying? But it looks maybe like it's a smart decision now. He had a great year with Geno, and he's their go-to big time playmaker. And I think Seattle is a team that would be very comfortable with their culture changing everything to Richardson and being like what like the Ravens did with Lamar, and be like, oh no. Yeah, we're going to run this dude into the ground and throw deep bombs for 3 years and then 4 years and then never pay him and draft another quarterback. I can see them saying this in their heads and Pete going, look at the rest of the quarterbacks in my division. We have a year before Kyler's back. It's an infirmary in San Francisco. And the Rams, we don't know if Matt Stafford has had surgery in his elbow. If he hasn't had surgery in his elbow, what he's going to look like, especially in another year from now. So Seattle could be looking this as, in a year from now, we have Richardson going into year 2 in a new system surrounded by playmakers, a really solid offensive line, and we're now ahead of where the rest of our division is as far as being on schedule with our quarterback play. I really would not be shocked if Seattle. I'd be shocked if Seattle was not one of the 6.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is, like, the cost, right? I mean, the further down the draft order we go, the higher the price tag's gonna be. If a team's trying to jump, 13 spots,
Yeah.
then that's not gonna be as enticing for Arizona
Anywhere
to say,
after,
"Oh,
like,
you're gonna let us
16.
drop to 24."
Yeah.
It's tough. So you'd have to the price goes up significantly. For Seattle, they're 2 spots down. So they could give the number 5 pick and a 3rd rounder, and that could suffice for Arizona, so that cost would be reasonable for Seattle to make. Plus, they have a boatload of picks, and they can absolutely work within that. So I think that's a great call. One of the teams that is later down the draft order that I think is making phone calls and is in a similar situation as Seattle is the Minnesota Vikings.
Okay.
Because to me, Minnesota, with Kirk Cousins, they owe him next year, and then after that, there are dead cap hits for a few subsequent years, but he's not under contract and would need to renew and get a new deal done. Obviously, I mean, he's going to be entering year 36, and he's not the guy of the future there. It's pretty clear that they would like to move off of him sooner than later. So they're in a situation similar to Seattle with Geno, where we have a guy that we can win games with and we're comfortable with, and we have him for a year.
That's 20 spots.
It's 20 spots. It's going to cost them a lot, obviously. what other team is more due for a big splash than the stale Minnesota Vikings, who have been stale since what feels like the 1998 offense of the year, with Randy Moss and Chris Carter and Dante Culpepper. It just like this team
Yeah.
has needed a big move for a while, and I think they can still make it happen. So maybe they're thinking that they would like to package Dalvin Cook into something, or who knows? I
It
mean,
would
they
take a
they
lot.
have they have assets, they have picks. It would take a lot, but I think they could certainly be looking to move up into this position. Look, they need a quarterback sooner rather than later, and maybe
Yeah.
they feel really comfortable taking a guy to learn under a veteran like Kirk Cousins, than having to start from scratch with a rookie next year or the year after that.
For my third and final guess, I think there could be others. And
Absolutely, yeah.
we can maybe give a couple others after here, but my third would be look at the number 12 spot. Who's at number 12? They got this pick from Cleveland for Deshaun Watson, the Houston Texans. Think about it. If you're Houston, you missed out on getting the number 1 pick, right? And your fan base is frustrated by that anyways. You've been spending basically all year scouting the top of the draft because you, in your head, thought we're going to be the top of the draft. And Cleveland, to start the year, was pretty bad as well. And up and down, you think we might have 2 top 10 picks here. Well, they end up with 2 and 12. Houston might say to Arizona, listen, we love a guy. Like we love this quarterback, and we also love Jalen Carter. We also love Will Anderson. You know what I mean? We've been looking at these guys for how long, how much film. And so I could see Houston saying to their fan base, look, I get it. We screwed up. We didn't get number 1 overall, but we got what we believe is the best quarterback because they'll sell that. You know what I mean? Whoever goes to them. But we believe we got the best quarterback. The guy we wanted. We would have taken number 1, whatever happens. And they can say, and we got Will Anderson. You know what I mean? Like, what a way to remake your draft. And they could do it from 12 to 3 is a jump. But Arizona, if you gave them next year's first, which you have extras because of the Cleveland first. I mean, Cleveland, remember, they not only signed Deshaun Watson, they gave up 3 first-round picks or 2 and a bunch of others. So
it was
Houston's loaded with capital to make a move. And it also is it could be a really good PR thing for them. You want to win the draft? Get the number 2 and the number 3 pick. You know what I mean? And so I think that could, now you got a defensive coach. So DeMeco Ryans gets his guy. The franchise gets their face with the quarterback. I think Houston was definitely one of the teams that called.
I agree. Yeah. You make a really good point there. And I'm convinced. I certainly think Houston could be a part of that. They absolutely need a home run. They're so overdue for home runs. And so to be able to get the best, one of the best quarterbacks, in recent years, and get the best, edge defender or defensive tackle, whatever it is. I mean, that's hard to say no to that if you're a Texans fan. And if you're the Texans, like you said, you give up those assets for in the future, that's fine. If this works out like you think it will, then it won't matter. The final team I'm going to put out there then is the Las Vegas Raiders. I know that Jimmy G has a history with Josh McDaniels. I also know that Jimmy G is not the guy that gets you over the hump. He's fine. He's Kirk Cousins. I'm not convinced that Josh McDaniels, if he wants to keep his job as head coach of the Raiders, is going to go with Jimmy G as his quarterback of the future. To me, this is a stopgap, and they need a quarterback to work with and kind of push the franchise into overdrive and push them forward. Something like it's once again, it gets us back to the Geno Smith, to the Kirk Cousins. Like, having Jimmy G as a perfectly fine starting quarterback to like win games and sell to your ownership that like you're making an attempt to win and to win now, while also having a perfect mentor for your rookie quarterback. And so I think, And if you're the Raiders, you've been picking in the top 10 an awful lot. You're hoping that you're not going to be doing this for the next 5 years. This might be the time to do it. This might be the time to pull the trigger, get yourself up there a little bit. It's not going to cost you a whole heck of a lot going from 7-3, and you find yourself a way to compete with Mahomes, compete with Herbert and Russell Wilson. Otherwise, Jimmy G's not going to be the guy that defeats those guys in division year in and year out. It's just not going to happen. You need someone that can hit a home run, and a Richardson, a Levis. We don't know what their floor is. It could be super, super low, but their ceiling could also be through the roof, and maybe you're willing to take a chance on that.
You have Jimmy G. I love that pick because you have Jimmy G for 3 years. And so.
But the third year is malleable.
Well,
right?
yeah,
I know.
Really what I'm saying is you have a quarterback who can start hopefully at least 14 games for you for 3 years and hopefully win about 70% of those 14 games. So 8, 9-ish wins, right? That's what you kind of hope what you have with Jimmy G. A more consistent, maybe better cultural fit than Derek Carr. And I also understand that Jimmy G was probably Josh McDaniels' choice too, to say, hey, I have a offense, I have a culture I want to try to fit in here, and Jimmy G knows it, and so he can help me with that, where Derek wasn't as helpful in that regard. Either way, I think that's spot on. And I do think that the Raiders are poor. We know that. So I don't think that's a fact. So I meant to say it's a fact the Raiders are poor. And so having quarterbacks on the rookie deal is always going to be a positive for a poor organization.
And who's to say they're not willing, and Jimmy's not willing to be a backup in a couple years? I mean, we're talking about a guy that's super well liked in the locker rooms. Like, he's not a guy, to me, doesn't come across as a money grabber who's gonna want to keep moving and seeking
and he'll be
the best deals.
Backup always.
He'd be a valuable backup. So yeah, maybe you're paying a little bit more for him than you would want for a backup quarterback in year 2 or 3 of his contract, but he seems like the kind of guy that would handle it perfectly fine. And that's a guy that you would love to have be the starter and mentor for year 1, transition to backup, and continue to be a mentor year 2 and 3 for a rookie quarterback.
So the only other teams to me that would be on the radar from what we talked about would be the two other teams with the 2 first-round picks. The Lions at 6 and 18. I could see the Lions saying, we'll give you 6 and next year's 1, or 6 and 18 to get to 3. So then the Lions can just say, we get the Will Anderson. Hey, fans, we just went and got the best defensive player in this draft to add.
6 and 18, though, man. That's rich, though.
It is.
I mean, they'd want something. I would want something else out of that. If I were them, I don't know. I mean,
well, maybe they can get a 4th rounder in return. You know what I mean? Or
you got to get some asset, but a
player. You know what I mean? They could get a corner from Arizona or something. Hashtag Jeff Okuda. The other team would then be Philadelphia. Now, Philly fans may argue they're in a perfect spot, right? They lost a bunch of players. They lost 2 of their head coordinators, but they still have a lot of good things going for them. It looks like they're going to try to sign Jalen Hurts to a deal here. There's some early reports on that. I don't want to get too in the weeds on it. So Philly fans may argue, no, just take 2 picks in the first round. We need to replenish. But I would argue if you're Philly, you have still a really great roster, even though you lost a lot of things. Get rid of 10 and basically 30 is a second round pick anyways. Give them 10 and 30 and go to 3 and just go get the best player in the draft. You know what I mean? Because the best player in the draft is not Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, and they're going 1-2. So you can say, hey, we are the defending NFC champions. We barely lost in the Super Bowl on a questionable holding call, and we just got the best player in the draft, whoever you think it may be. I think that could be a home run for Philadelphia. Them and Detroit are the only 2 teams, in my opinion, that would be looking to move up and not take a quarterback. Every other team looking to move up of the 4 or 5 we talked about, in my opinion, you're only moving up to take a quarterback. And Dan, I mean, think about it. When is the last time teams moved up drastically to get a quarterback, and it worked out really well? Buffalo moved up to get Josh Allen. Well, Buffalo had just been to the playoffs with Tyrod Taylor, so they weren't like a disaster. They kind of knew we needed to get a franchise quarterback, and they found their right one. That same draft, Baltimore moved back up to get Lamar Jackson. Similar thing. They had missed the playoffs, but they were a solid roster. They barely missed it. They have John Harbaugh, a great culture, right? And then, I mean, what? The Chiefs moved up to get Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, that worked out. But again, they had just been to the playoffs. Andy Reid, culture. But when you make a move to trade up, the Jets to get – did the Jets trade up to get Zach Wilson?
No, the Jets had the number 2 pick. The Jets had the number 2 pick. But you're Chicago Bears. You know, the jury's a little bit out.
Up for Justin Fields and traded up for Mitch Trubisky. One did not work. One is still questionable. Trending in the right direction, but questionable. The Niners traded a ton to get Trey Lance. That's been a disaster so far. I mean, the Patriots stood still for Mac Jones, so that is something. But it's risky to trade up if you're not a win now mode, you know, like we just talked about, the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens. If you're not in that kind of solid culture win now mode, trading up, it can be a disaster. I think that Cardinals traded up to get Josh Rosen in that same draft. That obviously didn't work.
Rough.
I gotta try to think more examples of teams.
I know off the top of my head, I can't really think of.
In the last couple drafts, especially
when it happened,
you got to be careful. Like, there's a reason why that guy is the 3rd guy taken, because usually the mega trade up is the 2nd or 3rd guy, and usually there's a reason why they're not the number 1 guy. Now, Carolina, they'll be a great example. They're trading up big time, 9 spots, multiple picks, star player. They're not ready to win, and they're going to get a guy. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, add them to the list of teams that, you know, it's tough. That puts so much pressure on a kid. I mean, think of the poor kid who gets drafted. Not poor, I shouldn't say that, but like, think of the pressure for the quarterback who gets taken to Carolina number 1 overall. Welcome to Carolina. You have a aggressive, wealthy billionaire owner who wants to win now. You have a head coach who's on their 2nd chance trying to prove it was the organization, not me. And you have no weapons.
Yeah.
No weapons. So welcome to Carolina. You know, at least your division's winnable, but that's about it.
Yeah, that's I'm fascinated to see what they do with that. You know, I thought that there was an opportunity or possibility that they even tried to recoup picks. Like, what if I'm throwing this out there? I definitely don't think this is the case. I'm just throwing it out there. Like, what if they're, you know, trying to get the number 3 pick? What if Carolina's the one trying to get the number 3 pick from Arizona and then trying to shop the number 1 pick, recoup 80% of the assets they lost in the trade up to 1, and then say, all right, we're gonna take the, you know, we're comfortable with a quarterback. Well, here's the thing. Like, I think that most people agree it's going to be CJ Stroud or Bryce Young that they're going to take. That seems to be the consensus. But if you're Carolina and your guy is actually Anthony Richardson, it'd be dumb to take him at number 1.
Yeah.
It'd be dumb to use that pick knowing the, you know, absolute increased value that everyone's putting on Stroud and Bryce Young for the 1-2. So if it is actually the case that he's their guy, then it would behoove them to try and get as many assets as they can back and still stay in that tier and get Richardson at 3 or something like that. Obviously, I'm just playing devil's advocate. It'd be fun, though. It'd be a fun thing to consider.
Did you see the betting odds in Vegas went? It's now Bryce Young, the favorite, to go 1.
That's interesting. That's interesting. You know, and I know Frank Reich has been kind of cryptic in how he's talked about it. I mean, he's joked a couple times, like people would say, Frank, like all the quarterbacks you've ever worked with have all been 6'5", 230 hyper athletes. And he would always shrug it off and say, well, we could potentially take a shorter guy too. He would say things like that, knowing what that's going to like stir the pot a little bit.
Yeah.
But he's, obviously you got to keep your cards close to your vest. It isn't, but it is hard to envision someone who has so much experience working with a certain type of quarterback to go away from that mold.
Yeah.
Not that it's impossible. I mean, they're in the NFL, for crying out loud. Like, he's seen a lot of athletes. You'd be willing to work with any of them and whoever's the best. But CJ Stroud to me has still felt like the best fit for them and the guy that they're going to end up taking. I still feel like it's Stroud, but I wouldn't be shocked if it's Young.
If I was Carolina, I'd go Stroud. We've talked about this. And part of it is, look at the Bills have Josh Allen. The Dolphins countered with Tua.
Yeah.
If you have Trevor Lawrence in your division with Jacksonville and you counter with Bryce Young, it feels like a very similar type of thing to where you are basically saying we're comfortable being, well, that's Indy. Crap. I'm thinking Carolina. I mean, I guess that's a bad analogy. In Carolina, you don't have anyone in your.
No, yeah. In the NFC South,
in my head,
I mean, Derek
Indy,
Carr.
But you know what I was going with that. I mean, it feels in the NFC, I guess maybe it doesn't matter nearly as much. And we just saw it with Jalen Hurts. I mean, he outplayed Patrick Mahomes for a lot of that Super Bowl. You could argue he was the best player on the field. Stats.
Yeah, but see, even like those are the.
But Hurts is
because I know like Howard
Young. I would take Hurts over Young.
100%. Because that's the thing. Like Hurts is not small.
Yeah,
Hurts is bulky. Hurts is that guy's jacked.
I like Young more than Tua, though. I will say that.
I do like Young.
And if Young and Tua were in the same draft, I would be leaning Young. Young, even though he's literally the same size, Tua is a little more Kyler Murray kind of bulky, where Young, I kind of like, if you're going to be small, he's proportionately thin, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I know exactly.
Like Kyler looks like Kyler has got the little arm thing sometimes where it's like he looks kind of chunky. And I think that's a good thing for his taking hits. Tua, I thought it might help him, but it just doesn't. But for Bryce Young, I kind of like
fits his frame.
Yeah,
he fits his frame well.
It's weird, but I know we're going.
And it's not like he can't get bigger, of course. But
yeah, and I know we're totally. I don't even know exactly where.
The thing is, man, if you're gonna shoot, you have an opportunity here to shoot your shot.
Yeah,
and it's got to be like a home run. I mean, look, Cam Newton was we got the number 1 pick. We're going to take this massive dude, and yeah, he's got some work to do passing the football, but he's huge and he has experience. He had one of the greatest seasons ever by a college quarterback. Let's go with it. He gets them MVP. He's the number 1 pick. You don't have that in this class.
Yeah.
But
which is why
what's the one that,
and giving so much was such an interesting thing.
Right. Yeah. Caleb Williams would have made sense.
We knew we knew someone would trade with the Bears, but that's one of the reasons why I go back to the Bears got such a great deal in a draft where there's not Trevor Lawrence, there's no Andrew Luck. You got what I would expect to get if there was Trevor Lawrence or Andrew Luck.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure.
And that's why, and the Bears still might be able to get the best offensive lineman in the draft at 9. Which is their biggest need, which is, again, I don't want to make this a Bears thing now, but can we kind of finish on this, putting a button on it?
Yeah.
If you're Arizona, what are you thinking, right? Like, my perspective on this is I would very much be open to shopping, especially as we get closer, and especially if people are really high on Levis or Richardson. Because, again, I think the smartest thing Arizona needs to do is they need to punt on this year. If I'm the Cardinals, it's hard to punt in the NFC because there's so many bad teams that you'll probably end up winning more games than you should. You know what I mean? If you're bad in the AFC, your chances of getting the number 1, 2, or 3 pick are better than if you're bad in the NFC, which sucks for my Bears because I want the Carolina Panthers to be terrible next year to benefit from their first round pick. But if you're Arizona, I go all in on tank mode. I would sit Kyler pretty much the whole year. I would pretty much let Kyler know, unless we are within like actually winning our division come like Thanksgiving when you're going to be ready, then there's no chance you're playing this year. I want you to rehab like you should be playing this year and studying the new coach, new system. But we are going to take a year and it's going to be a total dive here. Because next year, Arizona owes Kyler Murray $50 million fucking dollars. Think about that. They owe him this year's cap hit's like 16 something. Next year, his cap hit is going a year from now. They owe Kyler Murray $50 fucking million. So think about that. If you're Arizona, my thought would be someone, for the love of God, give us their next year's first round pick and other things to come to 3. We then will go to wherever you want in the first round, take the best player available or, for a position in need, right? Say, let's go with Atlanta, for example. They go to 8. They take an edge rusher, they have a defensive coach or whatever, and they take an edge rusher or, whatever. And they get Atlanta's first round pick next year. Well, think about it. Arizona then next year is going to be bad. They could be top 5 with their own pick. Atlanta probably will end up top 10 with their own pick. Arizona will be double picking top 10 next year if they are able to trade. When they owe Kyler Murray $50 million.
Yeah, exactly.
So think about that. Like, you're going to get 2 star players to then help in your, okay, Kyler's back. Kyler's healthy. We've got to win now. Go get 2 studs in the first round. In the top 10. So if I'm Arizona, I'm 100% shopping this pick. I'm trying to get as much as I can for it. I'm punting on this season, and I am praying, like the Bears are, whoever we trade it to is going to be a top 10 worst team next year, that I'm going to be a top 10 worst team, and then I gain 2 top 10 picks next year with a healthy Kyler Murray and a win now attitude. Does that? I know that was a long rant. Does that make sense? I mean,
I think it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it does.
It's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean they should shop that pick. I don't know if a guy like Will Anderson is the one that's gonna, take Arizona from the team they are to a winning franchise team. He's a phenomenal player. He is better suited for what you kind of said, like someone like a Philadelphia or Detroit, help take them over the top a little bit.
Yeah. Imagine him next to Hutchinson.
Right. I mean, that'd be amazing. Of a dynamic duo, and you need those types of pass rushers in this league. But Arizona has, quite a few holes there, and they need to figure out, what they're doing. I think that they could very likely be in the top 10 again next year. So if you are going to be in that situation, this isn't like this is our only time that we have to take a player of Will Anderson's caliber. You might have other opportunities. And if you trade down to 7, like let's say you trade with the Raiders or the Lions at 6, like you're still going to get exactly. You're still going to get a dominant player. Maybe you still get Will Anderson for all you know. I mean, it could happen. So
that's a lot of the talk with the Bears right now, is that why not trade if all of a sudden Richardson or Levis is still on the board at 9 and teams get hungry and they call. Like, you absolutely should trade down. If you're going to, like, from 9 to 13 or 9 to 4, like, they could still get Skoronski or one of the other top 2 or 3 linemen in the draft. And you have to, if you're a GM, and I know there's no GMs that listen to us, but they should listen to us. If you are a GM, you've got to remember that next year you have a guaranteed, at this point in time, when you're making the deal right now, a guarantee that the first 2 picks are a generational quarterback in Caleb Williams and someone who teams love a lot, who would probably be in discussion for the number 1 pick this year in Drake May. So you have that already. And you know that someone else is going to have a year. There's going to be another Anthony Richardson, right? There's going to be another Will Levis that like pops out of nowhere. So if you're look at, it's the same thing we talked about when Chicago made the trade. the best thing Chicago is going for them is they have that Carolina pick. And if that Carolina pick is a top 3 or 5 pick, we know it's a quarterback rich draft next year. So if you're Arizona, you can do what Chicago did and set yourself up for years to come. If you can get someone who you think is going to end up drafting in the top 5 next year, if you can get their first round pick next year, you have to make that trade, because this year is a wash for you anyways, because your franchise quarterback, who this year you're only paying $16 million. But next year, did I mention you're paying $50 million for Kyler Murray? You've got to have assets to help him win this time next year. All in. So that to me is one of those things where on the surface, you got to remember all the things these GMs have to juggle. And if I was a GM, maybe I'm overthinking it too much, but when you know the next year's draft has a generational quarterback, you've got to be preparing to try to be in the top 5 of that, especially if you already feel like you have your quarterback, because you can get in, like the Bears got an embarrassment of riches and it sets you up.
Got to play chess sometimes instead of checkers, when everyone else is playing checkers. So, we'll see kind of how that shakes out. There might be some movement here in the next week when we hear about that pick, but Arizona would be smart to wait as long as possible to get as much as possible for that pick. And
this
so
isn't
now
even
we're 2
our
weeks
draft
away.
preview.
No, exactly. We've got 2 weeks until the draft, and we have our draft preview on the way. So obviously, stay tuned for that, and we'll keep you updated with the latest news each week.
What will the Steelers do at 17?
I mean, that's what everyone's asking,
Find
right?
out
That's
time.
the big question. Find out. Hey, is Joey Porter Jr. gonna make his way to the Steel City?
Back in the black and gold, baby.
Very well could happen.
It.
But yeah, we're gonna have that whole full breakdown of the first round, our predictions for what these teams will do in the first round. That's gonna be a lot of fun. So stay tuned for that. But until next time, we hope everyone has a great rest of your week. Check us out on the Football Lounge podcast on YouTube. Give us a like, subscribe there, and check us out as always on social media at FB Lounge Pod. He's Mark. I'm Dan. We'll see you here next time.